Hi there, Granddad Got Mojo here, and this is just a little video to um, kind of show the features and how my new script that I've been working on called AlgoRaver works inside of Sansar. I've been working on it about 2 months. I'm about ready to call it the alpha stage and then go on to the next version of this. And this version I'm not going to sell, but it'll be available inside of an experience. You can come in the experience and play with it all you want. So, first of all, AlgoRaver is a piece of software that allows you to make music inside of Sansar by programming it, by basically um, telling, sending commands to it to tell it to play different things. So it's a very interactive way of creating music inside of Sansar. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and walk over into between the two turntables, which there is a collision volume that triggers the start of the script. The way that you interact with the script is via the chat window. So if we go in here and say, first of all, for a song that you're going to do in AlgoRaver, you have to establish a tempo, and that's done with beats per minute command. So you type in BPM, and in parentheses you put 100. You can put whatever you wanted to, and that will basically set up a metronome that will be playing in the background. You won't hear anything, but it's going on to go ahead and set the thing that will tie all the music playing together to the same tempo. So there you go. The main command you use to create music is a loop command, and the loop command basically is like a track in an old tape recorder. It's you have a loop set up for a bass, for a guitar, for a drum, an organ, so on, and you go ahead and then tell that sample or instrument to play in that loop. So yeah, a loop command starts with a keyword loop and then a number, and the number 0 through 7, because I have 8 loops available in the first alpha release. I'm sure I'll add more later if Sansar client can handle it, but right now I have 8. So you say loop 0, and then the next thing you do is say, what do you want this loop to do? What do you want to do in this loop? And basically in a loop, you've got two things going on. You've got a sound playing, and you've got the amount of time between when the sound should play again or sounds should play again. Notes, for example, might play again. And then also there's really a third thing. It's a bunch of other parameters to control that sound, and I'll show some of them here. So loop 0. So I'm going to play a sample to start with, and the sample is nothing more than a little recording of anything. It can be a recording of a bass drum, a bass note played on a bass guitar, a whole passage out of an orchestral movement. It doesn't matter. It's a sample. It's just a wave file. So I'm saying play, or a AIFF, or any kind of a audio file that'll play inside of Sansar. So these samples, by the way, are preloaded as well, and I'll show you a little bit of that later. So I have literally dozens of samples loaded to choose from, and what I've done is there's other programs called sample packs that also kicked off when I walked into this collision volume and sent all the samples preloaded into this program and making it available to AlgoRaver. And I'll have some other videos that show that if anybody's interested, wanting to build their own sample packs. Loop zeros sample. The sample I'm going to play is one called Bass Drum House, a good old EDM German sample. And there's two types of sounds you can play. You can play samples and you can play instruments. A sample I just talked about, it can be any little piece of recording. A instrument is like a piano or a guitar or anything, and it's basically a bunch of samples and offsets that are stored in an array and get called out by a notes command. So you can play notes just like you're playing them in a piano algorithmically through this software. But I'm going to do a sample first. And then you have to identify if you've said, hey, I want to play that sample, the bass drum, and I want to play it every beat. You'd say beats 1. So again, the timing is by beats rather than 2 seconds or 1 second, because what you're doing is really controlling it to do it musically. So this means it'll play one, since it's 100 beats in a minute, 100th of a minute, and what's that? Little around a half a second. So if we go do this, we should hear a beat, and there the beat gets started. The next kind of thing is, let's go ahead and play a different sample. So I will play loop 1. So again, this is like another track. I want to play on that one. I'm going to go ahead, rather than make mistakes typing, I'm going to go copy it in from a notepad I got. So I'm going to go ahead and play loop 1. And loop 1 is going to be, again, a sample. The sample I'm going to play is bass funky C3-8-100, and that's just the name of the sample, the file. And I've set up all my sample files with a certain naming convention, something to remind me what it is, like bass funky, and then I almost always put the key, so it's C3, the third C on a piano, and then the next parameter, the 8, is normally there's 8 beats, and to play this sample all the way through, so it's a long sample, and it's 100 beats per minute it was recorded at. So I'm saying play that sample, hold it for 8 beats before you repeat it. I have a pan command, which basically spreads the music left and right. So I'm going to move this the music over to one side here, where this funky bass is, and I'm doing that to get a separation of the music, so it doesn't all sound like it's right in front of me. And then I've got the sync command, which says, hey, sync this with loop 0, meaning don't start it until loop 0, the loop 0 sample starts playing. So that way it'll, at least at the beginning, they'll all be in sync. So there's a bass playing. And if I'm just going to add more. Here's another example of I'll be playing more of them, but I'm going to add another one called Drum Soulness, and it's 32 beats. It's 100 beats per minute, and I'm going to pan that not quite as far over, more towards the middle, and again sync it with loop 1 instead of loop 0. So I'm going to sync it with the bass. There you go. See how it didn't start until the bass loop started again. Second octave in a scale, pick the notes on the minor pentatonic scale randomly, and every 0.25 beats play one. And again, pan and loop and sing it. By loop 5, stop it. Here it's better, so you can stop each loop. You can do a number of other things as well. Stop it all. And that will slowly wind it down and stop everything. So that is kind of in a nutshell the kind of commands that I have in the first release. I'm going to show something real quick here, and I'll add it to my notes in it. But I have a number of programs. I've got all this out in GitHub. So if you look in GitHub, here's my GitHub for the Sansar things I've written, and I'll be dumping all my programs in here. But I started a wiki just to give some people an idea, and just a real quick review of some of the things I've got here, rather than showing you playing it. I have a command reference, and if I look at that, we saw the beats per minute, we saw the stop all, we saw the sample, we saw the beats. You can change the volume of the sample on a given track or in a given loop. You can change the pitch if it's a sample, and that's that'll change it by a percentage. So if you want something to go 20% faster, it will. Or I often use pitch for what's called beat matching. Like, for example, if I have a sample that's recorded at 60, but I want to, and the rest of the song's at 100, I'll take 100 and divide it by 60 and for the pitch to make it go faster, so it'll match up with the rest of the song. I'm sorry, that's pitch. So I don't even know what I'm doing. That's what rate does. I'm sorry. That's what the rate command does. Pitch actually changes it by a semitone or a note on the Western scale. So 12 notes to an octave. Sync again we talked about, and it syncs it with another loop. Stop, you can stop a loop. Instrument, you got the ability to play the instrument. You identify the instrument you want to play. You identify the notes you want to play, and you can play a single note. You can play a set of notes. You can play those notes in a ring, like I did with the bass saw wave, or you can play it in a randomly with a random command. Again, beats. Now beats I didn't show here, but you can play beats also with rings and with random. So you can play, you can say, hey, the first note you play a beat for 1. The second note you're playing, play it for a beat of a half, and the third note, play it for a beat of a half. So you can basically write melodies with this if you want to. And rather than writing every note down, you can say just pick a scale, like I showed the minor pentatonic scale or the major scale. You can play the scales, and I can show you real quick how many scales there are. There's dozens of them that I've set up. Octaves says, hey, I want you to play this scale, but I want you to play this scale over 2 or 3 octaves or 1 octave. Chord is like scale, except it plays all the notes together. So you can say, hey, I want to play a C9 chord, in this case a C4 chord 9th, and I've got a lot of chords you can play as well. So those are the kind of commands, and then I've got examples of what kind of commands you can play and how they work in this. Let's talk about the available sample packs that I load inside of my experience. And I created again the idea of sample packs, and these are the pictures of the configurations of the scripts. So basically, it loads all these samples that I've collected over the years that are all public domain. And so I've got a cymbal sample pack, a drum sample pack, a couple custom ones, some loops, so on. Then I also created those instruments like the piano, and I've got all these instruments as well, which are really sets of samples that are written in such a way that you can play the notes or the scales or the chords using these instruments. The scales and chords I have real quick loaded. These are all the major scales I have. So, if you want to play a harmonic minor scale, it's there if you tell it to do it. And you can use this just to experiment if you want to learn more about music. The Bartok scale, some really interesting things. Hindu scale, I've done some things with that, which is kind of a neat little scale. So anyway, there's a bunch of scales, and then all the chords. So basically every chord that you can run, or that you can create, half diminished chord or suspended four or whatever. And I use this a lot, and I've done some jazz stuff too because I've got a jazz background. So that's what I've programmed on the first release. And I can kind of talk about real quick. I'm going to wrap this up this next week, and then I'm going to go on to version 1. And version 1 is going to have a lot more features in it. And you can see what those features I plan on adding are to make it a little more powerful. I'm also going to use it to create physical instruments. So instead of just using the loop like we saw as a loop player, I'll have a physical instrument that you can get next to, or you can get in its volume collision space, and then you can actually play that instrument. It'll play it on the grand piano. And that way, you get a group of friends together with different instruments, and you can have a band inside of Sansar if you want. I've also started to work on seeing how I might want to do that with a VR headset. Again, error handling, I'm actually going to put some in. That's why it's alpha. I don't have any, so just have to type carefully. And I'm also going to look, I'm going to go a deeper dive into FMOD because I've done a lot of FMOD programming with its lower level C, C++ API. I'm going to see if I can trigger that directly and then try to get together with the Linden Labs team to see if they would possibly provide me an interface into the more powerful underlying FMOD features. That the FMOD is the engine that Sansar is using on the client. And this would allow me to use especially effects like flangers and phasers, which are a big part of my music playing when I'm doing algorithmic playing with another piece of software that had a hand in writing called Sonic Pi. I do a lot of that. Anyway, that's where I've got. Quick overview. And I'll tell you guys all where you can go do it, and I'll probably start playing this at our own little mini raves around the Sansar world. So thanks for listening.